For 200 years, Singapore has been home to the Jews, the Parsis.
Wherever the Parsees have gone, they have brought sweetness to that country. Beautiful.
The Arabs.
Next generation of the alternate family.
Beautiful.
And the Armenians.
Galveston Avenue is named after my Armenian grand-uncle.
They are part of the Singapore Mosaic today, and this is their story.
My name is Sarah Cafe. I belong to the Jewish community here in Singapore. I was born in Germany, and I've been living in Singapore for the past 30 years, which became my home, and all my 5 children were born here. Hi, hello, how are you?
Good.
Is Jocelyn in?
Yes, she is.
Yeah?
For Daniel?
Daniel, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Jocelyn.
One of Sarah's 5 children is 10-year-old Daniel. It's time for his monthly haircut. And for him, there is one important rule.
The first thing I tell them, please don't cut the sideburn. So I always make sure I am standby because sometimes they don't understand.
Sarah, as usual, have you cut for him?
Yes, all over. You just cut it all short.
Sure.
Just make sure the sideburns, as usual, you don't cut it.
Okay.
You just trim it a bit.
Okay.
Okay? For Orthodox Jews, they are not allowed to cut the sideburns, and very Orthodox Jews are not cutting at all the sideburns. Boys can't cut hair until age of 3. They cut their hair only after age of 3. And when we cut the boys' hair, the sideburns here, we just leave it a bit long. This is something which is written in the Torah. We just follow it. I've been living here longer than actually in Germany. I moved here when I was very young. People think we're still tourists because we don't look Asian. And they don't want to believe us first that we're from Singapore. I said, you know, I've been living maybe longer than you here. This is home. Actually, my son David, my second boy, the day my son finished national service in Singapore, we were very proud. We were proud to be part of Singapore. It was a special moment. I think that made him feel he belongs here. The only time my son shaved off his sideburns is when he enlisted to the Singapore National Service. So he had to shave off all his hair.
Sarah, you want to come in to have a look? Daniel, you like it? Yeah. Hi.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't think I could live again in a country where you see one culture. You know, here it's a multicultural nation. So that's what makes it so special to be here. Singapore has got a long history of Jewish life. The Jewish history in Singapore is very rich. Thanks, bye. Thank you, Jocelyn.
A history that lives on today. The Jacob Ballas Children's Garden is named after a successful stockbroker and philanthropist Jacob Ballas. His generosity was shaped by poverty he experienced as a child. Another Jewish philanthropist, Manasseh Meyer, was one of the wealthiest merchants in Southeast Asia. By the 1900s, he became a major property owner in Singapore, even building the city's first block of flats. Meyer Road has been named after him. Both men, like many of the first settlers, were originally from Baghdad, Iraq. They came via India to trade between the then British ports of Calcutta and Singapore. A census in the early 1800s recorded barely 10 Jews on the island, but by the turn of the century, there were 500, with many more arriving from Egypt, Europe, and Russia. Today, there are roughly 2,000 Jews in Singapore, from lifelong citizens to those who have more recently made this their home.
Don't smile. Everybody hold, don't smile and look at the camera.
Okay. My name is Yoni Garberg.
I've been part of the Jewish Singapore community for 10 years now. I run a small technology startup, and 3 of my 4 children were born here.
3, 2.
This is my wife, Connie, and this is Elizabeth. She's our oldest, and this is Deborah, middle, and we're missing our twin 5-year-olds. Deborah was born in Singapore, and the twins were born in Singapore. Elizabeth is the only one in our family that was born in the United States. My wife was born in China, I was born in Israel. We've been moving around a lot, and this is the longest I've lived anywhere with my wife in the same place, and we've made it our home now.
Today, Yoni and his family are at a bat mitzvah celebration. This is a coming-of-age ceremony for Jewish girls.
I must admit that part of my Jewish identity was created here in Singapore to some extent. It's funny to hear myself say it, but it's true. In Israel, one doesn't need to be too Jewish. You're surrounded by Jews. It's just part of life, and you don't need to make a conscious decision of participating. And when I first got here, I wasn't looking for synagogues. I wasn't looking for Jewish landmarks. It wasn't the first thought in my mind. In fact, I was happily surprised that there was Jewish infrastructure here in Singapore already. The first thing I noticed was when we used to drop my daughter off at school, right across the street was the Chesed El Synagogue on Oxley Rise. A beautiful edifice, an awesome national monument. We would also go on Friday nights, especially when my father is here, to Magen Avot, the synagogue on Waterloo Street. Both my wife and I started working in the CBD, and one of the streets around the corner was Synagogue Street. It's funny, I mean, it feels like I'm surrounded by Jewish street names and Jewish monuments. It took me coming to Singapore to really find my Jewish roots and my Jewish soul.
Another community with local landmarks linked to them are the Parsis. Like the Jews, the Parsis also first arrived via India as traders.
I'm Dilnawaz Zaveri. I'm a Parsee Singaporean. I'm proud to be a Parsee Singaporean, especially because we have a legacy that goes back 200 years in Singapore. In the 7th century, Parsis fled from Persia due to religious persecution and came to India first. Because they had come from Persia, from Pars, the Indians started calling them Parsis. Parsis arrived in India. They moved to all parts of the world slowly, slowly. When they started trading with China, a lot of Parsis en route to China, some of them did settle in Singapore.
The exact number of those early migrants are not known. Today, there are around 300 Parsis in Singapore, a majority of whom, like Dilnawaz, have moved here from India.
If anybody asked me, what's your race, I would say I'm from India, because I soon realized that if I were to say Parsee, people go, what's that? But yes, when people say, what's your religion, I tend to say I'm a Zoroastrian, because Zoroastrian is the religion. The race is Parsis. Worldwide, we are less than 150,000. So the Parsee community is getting smaller and smaller. It is dwindling. There's a very interesting stories about when the Parsis came to India. They asked for the king there to give them a little milk, and they added sugar to it and said that just as how the sugar has dissolved and made your milk sweet, we will add this kind of sweetness to your country. And then wherever the Parsis have gone, they have brought sweetness to that country.
Singapore was no different. An example of Parsee sweetness here was in the 1950s. A Parsee tycoon, Navroji Mistry, made a $1 million donation to the Singapore General Hospital to set up a children's wing. Today, it's part of the hospital's diabetic care center, where he's been immortalized.
$1 million to Singapore General Hospital, and $1 million in those days was a lot. So a whole wing was named after him as the Mystery Wing. There's Mystery Road, which was also named after the philanthropist. So that, of course, is a sense of pride, even though we are such small in numbers.
Okay, we're gonna change now, right? Alright. Okay. Oh, it's good.
I'm Zephyr Kimbata. I'm a Singaporean, and I'm a proud Parsee. As Parsees, you can consider us maybe a rare breed in Singapore, because there's only about 300 plus of us. And with this little girl over here, you can increase that number to 301. Yeah, right? So growing up in Singapore as a Parsee, I was always someone who stood out and was someone who was looked upon as, hey, where's this guy from? So the countries they would guess I'm from, maybe sometimes they would say Middle East. They would be like, are you Arab? Some of them would be like, are you Italian? Some of them would be like, are you from Europe? Some of them would be like, are you Indian? I even got Russian once. I pretty much knew who I was, and I was okay with that. So in school or college, or even now when people ask me, like, what's Parsee, what's Zoroastrian, and I find it hard to explain, I just show them this photo of Freddie Mercury, and I ask them, like, hey, do you know this guy? And they go, yeah, of course I know him, And I go, yeah, so we're like the same race and same religion. And then they go, oh, right. I've always thought Freddie Mercury and Queen's music was always really unique. And like drawing a parallel, like in Singapore, being a Parsee is pretty unique.
Hello.
Singapore. It's a really diverse place with diverse culture. So I'm currently married to a Hindu, and we have a cross-culture marriage. Our daughter gets to learn about 2 different cultures. We're going to make our daughter aware of the Zoroastrian faith, Hindu faith, even other religions, cultures, and she can pick for herself if and what she wants to do, and we'll help to support that discovery.
The Jewish people have been in Singapore since the 1800s. And over the years, the community would have kept kosher. That means to follow strict Jewish dietary laws. It's the same today for many Jews, including Sarah.
My kosher products today. We don't eat pork, fish without fins and scales, and our the beef and chicken has to be slaughtered differently. We're very strict with how we slaughter the animal. We don't eat the blood of the animal. We let the blood come out. We have to salt the animal. So even if it's vegetarian, do they put any ingredients or preservatives inside that might be from an animal? So all this makes it not kosher. So today I was very excited. I went to the grocery store and I found a new cracker, which is kosher. It has this symbol, so it comes with an OU sign, okay? And there's another product here with another different symbol. It's a K with a heart shape. I buy my products from all over Singapore, but the meats and the chicken and the major kosher products we buy from the kosher shop in the Jewish Community Center.
The kosher shop, where we provide our members with the kosher foods, which are very difficult to obtain in the supermarkets. You have plenty, a big variety of, for example, chocolate spreads in Singapore, it's not a problem, but to find them in kosher, I think this is the challenge, right? Very often the staples of kosher Jewish food is missing, and this is what we import. We slaughter poultry here locally, provide kosher poultry at a decent and affordable price.
But keeping kosher goes beyond shopping for the right ingredients. How food is handled is equally important.
We don't cook meat and dairy together. It has to be separate. I have 2 of everything. So this is my kitchen, my kosher kitchen. So I have a separate sink for meat, a separate sink for dairy, as well as oven is separate, which is my meat oven, my dairy oven, and 2 separate refrigerators and separate utensils. So I have my separate utensils for meat and separate utensils for dairy.
All right, so you help us sing it, but we sing in Hebrew, okay? Because only some of us know how
For
to sing
Yoni's
Hebrew.
family, Jewish life in Singapore embraces the cultural melting pot.
Who here knows how to sing Happy Birthday in Chinese? Yeah! Wow, everybody. That's easy one.
We're celebrating Deborah's 7th birthday. She's our middle daughter, and she was the first one born here. And one of our traditions is we sing Happy Birthday in English and Mandarin, but we also include Hebrew. My family is multicultural. We try to incorporate both the language, the food, and other traditions into our life.
It's not either or. We feel like very comfortable bringing them up in both a Chinese and a Jewish way, especially in Singapore when it's such a diverse and inclusive culture. Different ethnicity, different religion, they blend in together. So for us, it's very easy to be Chinese and Jewish at the same time.
During Tomb Sweeping Day, we'd go to one of the Buddhist temples here, and the kids and my wife would go and give respect. We celebrate Chinese New Year here. We have a reunion dinner with friends or family that's in the area. Like the first 30 days after our babies are born, we've had 30-day first moon celebrations with our friends. It's a very Chinese tradition.
As far as traditions go, the Parsees in Singapore have also managed to retain some of their age-old customs. For Zephyr, though, some things need a little bit more effort.
I'm going to sleep soon. So basically, we follow the Parsee calendar, but then we also follow the Roman calendar, of course. So because of that, we have 2 birthdays every year. So some mornings you wake up and family will be furiously texting you, "It's Mom's birthday today." I was like, "Really? Like, did I get the date wrong or something?" Then, no, it's a Parsee birthday. I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." So you always got to remember, like, oh, this date is the Parsee one, this date is like the English one. 2 birthday cakes, 2 dinners, 2 everything. So everything will be celebrated twice. So my daughter, she's born on the 17th of January. That's the modern birthday. But as for the religious one, I think I'll have to check with my dad and get back to you.
That is the Jewish cemetery, and right next to it is our Parsee cemetery.
The Parsee cemetery in Singapore has existed for a long time.
Have a look at this. Do you see this Palmer Road? All the graves before were at Palmer Road. They were moved to Tampines. They are now here at Choa Chu Kang. Our cemetery, first in Palmer Road, was started around the early 1800s. Traditionally, Parsees don't bury their dead or cremate them. We have a tower of silence, which is like a tower on a hill high up. It's an open tower where the bodies are placed and the vultures can come in and eat the flesh up, and the bones later disintegrate in the sun. That's how we do it. It's called the Tower of Silence or a sky burial. We have one in Mumbai because that's where most of the Parsees are now. In Singapore, since we don't have the Tower of Silence, then you have to adapt. Some Parsees do believe that there's a thing that they say that Parsee, thy name is charity, and in our death as well, we give back to Mother Nature as the vultures eat up the body, and it's the circle of life.
From Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, Jews observe the Sabbath. And preparations for their day of rest must start way before then.
Hi, Rose. How's it going?
Yes.
Everything ready? Yeah.
Check this getting ready to see the rice is steaming. Ready? It's Shabbat soon.
On Shabbat, we always have a nice family dinner. Shabbat is, in English, we say Sabbath, and this is where we don't do any work. Even we don't drive, we don't use electricity, we don't cook, we don't write. Looks good. Yeah, looks very good. Yummy.
Compared to the early days, how the Jewish community observes the Sabbath has changed a lot.
One of the things observant Jews have in their kosher kitchen is a hot plate. We cook everything before Shabbat comes in, and we have a hot plate here that we turn on before Shabbat comes in. And the food that we have cooked on that day, we will just warm it up. I switch off my phone. So being a real estate agent in Singapore, I do face challenges, especially when I have a client that is impatient. I have to make sure my colleague can cover. And thank God, so far I've been lucky. Sometimes my colleagues will say, you know, you're crazy, you know, because I might not be successfully close a deal, right? But no, I'm Jewish, so I have to do it. The wine glass goes here, Daniel. There's no TV. And that's a good thing about it. So one day, no TV with the kids. We get more quality time. They know they're keeping Shabbat. So it became a habit not to use the digital device. It's not the end of the world to keep one day away from the digital world.
So on Shabbat, I usually play with my mom or my sister, but usually she makes excuses and says she wants to rest or read her book. I try to ignore her, so I play with my tennis balls and my soccer balls. So whenever she hears it, she says, "Daniel, be quiet." And I feel very happy.
Even getting to the synagogue is different on the Sabbath.
One of the things we do when, for those who are observant Jewish, we don't drive, so we will walk to the synagogue. So I've got two synagogues nearby me. One is the Magen Abot synagogue, which is 20 minutes away from us. And there's another one nearby me, the Chesed El synagogue, which is just 5 minutes away from us. I live on the 13th floor. So thank God to my helpers here. She knows when I'm going down, she will press the lift for me. But many Jews who are even more observant than I am, they will not let the maid do anything for them. I'm really blessed to have them, and they help me to get everything done.
Even for those who aren't strictly observant, the Sabbath is special.
The last part of the song. Now we all stand. Rafi, can you open the door for us? We need to welcome the Shabbat inside.
We don't keep strict kosher or other laws in my house, but on Shabbat we try to make a better effort.
And we bow.
We try to arrive home earlier on Shabbat, making sure our dinner preparations are finished.
Shabbat starts with lighting the candle. Traditionally, it's the women of the family that lights the Shabbat candle. So for me, I and my girls will light the candle and say the prayers.
Amen. Jewish and Chinese culture is actually overlaps quite a lot, at least in the value systems. So respecting your elders and being committed to a good household, making a decent living, participating in community life.
It's a Kiddush fountain.
When Connie and I first started going out, Connie was obviously very curious about Jewish traditions. There was this website at the time, askmoses.com. Every time I have a Jewish question now, I usually go to Connie because she's studied Jewish traditions on the internet and knows sometimes answers better than I do. This is our Shabbat dinner. We're gonna have some matzo ball soup, our stew. It's based on my grandmother's recipe. And of course, there's no dinner here without some Asian flavor. We have some kangkong and some bok choy.
This is challah. It's a traditional Jewish bread during Shabbat, but we put a Singaporean twist to this challah bread and we filled it with kaya. Our children love kaya.
Shabbat dinner in our home is mostly Jewish, but yeah, I mean, the way we eat normally throughout the week is closer to an Asian diet. The food in both cultures is great, so it's a tasty relationship. What more can I say?
For Dilnavas, it's a mix of religion and culture at home too. Her husband is an Indian who practices Jainism.
Nice, perfect. Okay, good.
Hi, good morning.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Come on in. Let's go. Come. I know for a fact that if we were in India, there would be a lot of instances where there would be prayers going on and my husband and my daughter would not be allowed to sit in. Maybe an aunt or an uncle who's a little orthodox would say, maybe he should sit in another room, or, maybe you can come for the prayers. So the invite would be very specific, like you come, and leaving out the husband. Yeah, so of course you're rolling your eyes inside and thinking, oh, really? I mean, we are all human and it's just prayers. He's not coming to the fire temple, it's just prayers at home.
You just put it down.
But in Singapore, the whole family sits in. Like today, at this home blessing ceremony.
Huge refreshing change here in Singapore, of course. We've never encountered such a situation. He's welcome everywhere. He's accepted as one of the Parsees.
There are still always Orthodox groups that would not accept a spouse that's a non-Zoroastrian or the children that are non-Zoroastrian. Yet, openly within Singapore, that's not the issue. Singapore is very open. The community is very mixed, very diverse. We've been very open to interfaith marriage. We also perform their Navjots if they choose to go through that ceremony.
The Navjot ceremony is where a Parsee child is initiated into the Zoroastrian faith.
Strictly speaking, if a girl marries a non-Parsee man, then their offspring cannot be initiated into the religion. If we were in India, maybe my daughter's Navjot ceremony, the initiation into the religion, may not be possible in Bombay because people are a little bit more orthodox. But in Singapore, it could have been done.
Kai, come, I want to show you something.
Zephyr too has an interfaith marriage. But as a child, his upbringing was staunchly Parsee.
Zephyr's ordination as priest makes him one of 2 practicing priests in Singapore.
So this is a CNA video they did almost 20 years ago.
Okay. Zephyr has just come back from India after his month-long training, during which he was ordained a priest.
So I grew up in what I would call like a priestly household. My dad is a priest, and my parents just insisted I become one. And I was like, okay. So we flew to Mumbai and did the ceremony. So once I became a priest at 13, I pretty much attended every ceremony my dad or the community would ask me to go for. While other people had like extracurricular activities like sports, I had like being a priest on top of the sports and everything else.
Yeah, this is part I really want to show you. Okay?
Zephyr might be a priest, but when he is with his friends, there is no limit to his playfulness.
And they want a lot of big explanations. Some of them even go around saying,
you can't marry, you can't marry, you can't have children. And then it becomes quite embarrassing for me.
Zoroastrian priests are allowed to marry.
And the ring is on.
And Zephyr tied the knot in 2015.
Now kiss the bride.
So there's about 300 plus Parsees in Singapore. Every single person got an invite, and those who came, which is pretty much all of them. So at the start of the Parsee wedding, there's a little bit of playfulness going on where the husband or the wife has to throw rice over a white cloth, and then whoever throws it first is going to control the marriage, apparently. Yeah, so we both kind of threw it at the same time because we're both really competitive.
But it's been a while since Zephyr has undertaken his priestly duties.
So as you can see, this is my wardrobe and where all my clothes are. But then in this corner, we have my priestly attire that I haven't worn in a very long time. This is the hat, which I usually wear to prayers and of course. And way far in this corner over here is actually the main robe that we wear, called the jama. Although I've stopped performing the priestly duties publicly, I think I'm still very much a Zoroastrian and I pray a lot. I'd like to thoroughly understand what our script actually means, the ancient one, not the translations. People in the community, they do ask like, hey, what's up? I do tell them that, yes, I am taking a break, and once I find out what I need to find out about the ancient text, then, I'll be back.
Clothing often defines a people. For the Parsees, that defining garment may well be the sadra and kasti. Zephyr started wearing them when he was initiated into the faith.
So the sadra kasti is just protective garments. So one is a vest and one is a girdle, really like a string nowadays. So it's supposed to be protection and also to remind you of the win of good over evil. So growing up in Singapore, during school, if you wore it to go play your sports, it would get full of sweat. So you take it out, go play your sports, come back, put it back on. And with the tying of the kasti, which is a few rounds, everyone's like put on their shirt, boom, they're done, and they're sitting down, all the guys, and they're like watching you tie this thing, and the teacher's waiting, and I realized, like, okay, this is not gonna work at school. So I told my dad, he was a bit upset about it, so I started wearing it at home instead. I probably have about 15 of these right now in rotation, and throughout my whole life, probably been through about a few hundred. So I think it's the same for all Parsee Zoroastrian people. As an adult, I don't wear it outside either, just like when I was a kid, but I've always worn it at home, and I think it ties me very closely to my religion and my spiritual practices. And also on the practical note, it's very light, so it's great to wear at home in this kind of weather. One of the key characteristics of the sadra is that we have this pocket of good deeds here, and then this pocket of bad deeds at the back, and then the good deeds outweigh the bad deeds. So it signifies like good over evil. Yeah.
And then there's traditional attire for special occasions like weddings.
As far as formal occasions go for Parsee men, we have this, the dagli, our traditional outfit for occasions. As you can see, it's quite complicated. We have it secured here. Then we have a Velcro, keep this in place. And then we tie these. So we get a bow at the bottom and then one at the top as well. So it looks like a bow tie when it's done.
Yep, finally managed to get that right. So as you can see, this is what it looks like at the end. And we cannot find these in Singapore. So we get them tailor-made in Mumbai individually. So yep, there you have it, the dagli for the men.
For the men, it's the dagli. For the Parsee women, it's the distinctive Gara sari. These are often family heirlooms.
It's basically hand embroidery. It's very pretty. Till you don't see it, you cannot imagine it. So the history of the Gara sari is that when the Parsis came to India and they started adapting to the traditional clothes, which was the sari, the women started wearing a sari. And then the Parsi gentlemen started going to China to do trade, and that's when they saw these embroidered things which they thought would look very nice on their wives' saris. So they started taking the fabric and getting it embroidered into a sari. And that became more distinctive. It came from China. So the origins of the Gara sari are China. They're beautiful Gara saris. These two must be really, really old. Look at the work on it. It's exquisite. The embroidery is really fine. It takes a long time for a person to sit and do this embroidery. This particular one was given to me by my mother, and they're very, very expensive. Some of them can go up to, $2,000, $4,000. So, yeah, it depends on how much work is done on the sari, the price range. This is my favorite. This was also given to me by my mother. It has a very beautiful work on the sari. It has a little bit of Chinese influence in it, in the embroidery. And I'm now going to give this to my daughter. I'm going to teach her how to wear it. What I have done for her is I've taken a cheongsam kind of a blouse for her to wear to combine the two cultures to make her wear it with the sari and make it look traditional. We pleat a few pleats. Tuck it in at the back, okay? So it looks nice and pretty. Yes. Okay, look at yourself. Yeah? Pretty, isn't it? Yeah. Gorgeous. Let me see. Take it around. Lovely. Do you think you can do this? Yeah. Wear it on your own? Yeah? I don't think so, madam. It's not so easy. Yes, that's pretty. That's nice.
OK，我们一人一个 Junie and Rafi， 好不好？
桃蕾，苹果。
Good, good, good. Slanted.
That's all you need to know.
Kaf, lamed, mem, nun, samach, ein.
Besides clothing, language is also something that can define a person.
My kids, they go to the local schools. They're studying Mandarin daily here in the local schools. They go to my community Sunday school, where they get a couple hours of Hebrew a week.
OK， 1、2。
It's important for them to learn Mandarin because it's my wife's culture. And of course, we live in Singapore and in Asia, and it's important to have Mandarin skills.
Good job, girls. You wrote Shabbat Shalom. Well done.
Hebrew is important for me to at least say certain prayers and be able to participate in some of the services. It's nice for them to be able to feel comfortable with the language.
Sarah is making sure her son is comfortable with Hebrew too. Every week, Daniel attends classes at the synagogue with other Jewish kids.
Bye, darling. Have a nice time. See you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Hi, Daniel.
They get to sing in Hebrew, and then we'll learn the language, what they're singing. And that gets them more connected to the roots of their Jewish identity. As a Jewish mother, my responsibility is that my grandchildren will be Jewish. So in order for me to make sure my next generation will be Jewish, I have to make sure my children understand who they are, where they came from. So learning singing, learning Hebrew, he will then be able to continue his Jewish belief. Today we're here for the community to celebrate
the need to contribute and to make it.
We're celebrating the Jewish Lag BaOmer.
It's a celebration of Lag BaOmer.
It's the annual Jewish community gathering here at Sentosa.
The Jewish community in Singapore has never been big, but they have made the nation their home.
I love best in Singapore is that there's so many cultures. Growing up here is like very special. Since I'm Jewish, it's like very hard because you have to keep many laws, but still very fun, very nice. Because it's all different cultures, so we can tell them, oh, we're Jewish, oh, I'm Indian, oh, I'm Muslim, and it all goes together.
We don't feel any threat or any anti-Semitism that we feel in other countries. And within our community, we're very happy to be here together. In Europe, my son, I wouldn't allow him to wear the kippah and the small cap that boys wear. I would be more careful, more conscious about it. Whereas here, it's fine. It's not an issue to wear it.
The first thing that struck me when I came to the party today was a huge big balloon with a big Star of David on it. And my first reaction, usually around the world, do we want to associate this in a location like that? But here in Singapore, we're free to associate in that way. And we're free to congregate in a big way. And that's marvelous that we're allowed to just celebrate freely.
Being Chinese and also being part of the Jewish community here makes me feel very accepted.
Singapore's tiny Parsee community has a sense of belonging as well.
I've lived here all my life. It's a really diverse place. Everyone's welcome. We don't really discriminate. We're a nation of immigrants.
Even though we are such small in numbers, we have been here for 200 years. This is home for us. Singapore is home.
In the second part of Singapore Mosaic, how the Arabs and the Armenians have also made Singapore home.